Maybe you've tried to do the right thing for so long, and still you were judged. Maybe you made decisions that no one understood, not even you sometimes, but somehow they brought you here. And the question that won't go away is, if it worked out, was it really wrong? How many times were you condemned for acting differently, outside the usual logic, and yet the results showed up? Does that bother you? Because the truth might not lie in the path everyone points to, but in the one God reserved just for you. What if your apparent mistake was, in fact, a divine strategy to position you as the chosen one? Have you ever stopped to think that what seemed like madness was just faith? How many times were you doubted, underestimated, set aside, only to later see the universe itself conspiring in your favor? When everything seemed lost, something inside you insisted on not giving up. It wasn't pride, it was purpose. It wasn't stubbornness, it was conviction. The world may not understand, but heaven applauds those who follow their calling with courage. By the end of this video, you'll understand why it's not about what you did, but what worked. You'll discover that there's an invisible line between mistake and strategy, between failure and faith. And when this becomes clear to you, there will be no more guilt, only clarity. You'll realize that the transformation has already begun, and there's no turning back. God was working the whole time, even when it felt like silence. Get ready, because your story is about to be rewritten with authority. They looked at you and saw someone broken. They thought those closed doors would keep you down forever. They laughed at your pain, ignored your effort, and even said you'd amount to nothing. But what they didn't know is that a seed must disappear from sight to bloom. It's not burial, it's planting. And some plants sprout slowly, quietly, but when they grow, they become shade, shelter, a tree. You stopped trying to explain your process. While they expected noise, you built foundations in secret. That's wisdom. Not getting distracted by an audience while your heart still bleeds. While others chased applause, you healed quietly. They called you weak, but you were growing stronger. When the soul understands God is writing, there's no more despair, only surrender. Life hit you hard, yes, but it couldn't break you. You fell to your knees, true, but that's where faith truly found you. The world's underestimation activated your connection to the divine. Those who abandoned you did you a favor without knowing. They cleared space for you to meet your true self, and that version, born from pain, carries purpose in its veins. Don't think it was luck or chance. It was refinement. It was guidance. Even the silence of those you loved most was a tool in God's hands. He doesn't waste a single tear. He sees when you pray with your soul and answers in time. You are not what was done to you. You are what you did with it. And what did you do? You rose. You didn't cry out for justice. You didn't beg for attention. You chose to grow where they tried to cut you down. And that silent growth is the most dangerous, because no one sees it coming, only when it's too late to stop. That's how the chosen operate. They turn rejection into direction. While they mocked, you planned. While they pointed, you prayed. Make no mistake, those who thought you were standing still were wrong. You were simply quiet. There's a chasm between being still and being in preparation, and you were preparing with discipline, faith, and focus. Now the scene is shifting. When the stage is set, no one will understand how you got there. But don't worry, the answer will come in your presence. You don't need to prove anything to anyone. Read that again. Your existence is testimony. The simple fact that you're still standing after everything is a victory shouted in the spiritual realm. Some collapsed under far less. And you? You survived chaos, judgments, internal and external crises. That's not ordinary strength, it's divine protection. Not every miracle comes with fire from heaven. Sometimes the greatest sign that God is with you is peace in the midst of war. Calm without reason, progress without spotlight. That's how your victory arrived. Without fanfare, without an audience, without a trophy. But it's here, undeniable. Even those who doubted can feel it. Something changed in you. Your victory is invisible to natural eyes, but unquestionable to eyes of faith. And that's what unsettles. No argument can stand against a heart at peace. No one can grasp how you're okay with nothing, but that nothing is everything when you have faith. You have what money can't buy: balance. And that, my friend, is a mark of authority. Heaven honored you without you needing to defend yourself. Those who accused you are now confused. Those who ridiculed you now watch in silence. The victory you carry doesn't depend on likes, proof, or human recognition. God himself has validated you, and when he signs, no one can erase. When he chooses, no one can replace. Now stay focused. Don't waste energy explaining the unexplainable. Don't exhaust yourself convincing those who've chosen not to see. Walk, live, flow. Your answer isn't in words, it's in fruit. And you're bearing fruit, even if still in silence. This is just the beginning of what's to come. Because when God lifts you, it's not just to shine, it's to endure. And that endurance makes your victory eternal. Rising fast and falling faster won't do. What you carry was built with roots. That's why no one can take it. And now, let's talk about how this reconstruction happened without an audience but with purpose. Let's continue. Some victories go unseen, but God applauds them. While the world seeks visible triumphs, you fought invisible monsters, thoughts, traumas, guilt. The hardest part was smiling with a heart in ruins. No one knows the price you paid to stay whole when everything pulled you down. That's not weakness, it's strength in its purest form. You didn't need to broadcast your pain to validate your suffering. You chose the silence of your room over public explanations. Tears on your pillow became your most honest prayer. There, in the dark, God rebuilt you. He didn't use spotlights, he used mercy. While the world claps for performance, heaven honors authenticity. That hidden process was necessary. It hurt, but it made you wise. You learned to listen to yourself, respect yourself, heal from the inside out. That's worth more than any external validation. Some still don't understand how you emerged stronger from that dark place, and that's because they never knew your source of strength, your faith. Remember that day you almost gave up, but chose to keep going. That was a miracle. Not a cinematic one, but an internal one. Choosing to live when your soul bleeds is an act of courage few recognize, but God saw, and there he whispered to your heart, "It's not over. I still have plans for you." And he did, and does. Because today, those who see you can't imagine the desert you crossed, but you don't need them to know. You just need to keep going. Each step carries a weight of glory. Every morning, your simple choice to get out of bed is a prophetic declaration, "I won another day." And that's enough. So if someone asks how you overcame, you don't need to give details. Just say, "It was God, it was faith, it was silence." And thank God it was, because the greatest constructions rise far from the chaos. Now that you understand this power, come with me. Because while you built pillars in the dark, something greater was being prepared. There's no room for pity when you become the rock. What was once weeping turned into strength. What was once "why me" became "it had to be me." You stopped being a supporting character in your own life. You took the lead, not with pride, but with awareness. Pain taught you what no one else could, spiritual maturity. While others expected you to make a scene, you chose silence. But not just any silence, the silence of understanding, of realizing that victory isn't in proving, but in knowing who you are. And that, friend, is rare. Most still live for others' opinions, for external acceptance. But you built invisible pillars. Patience became your shield, discernment, your sword, and purpose, my God, your compass. Every trait in your character today is a fruit of the scars you refused to hide. You understood that if God allowed it, there was a lesson. And you learned, silently, in pain, but steadfast. That set you apart from the crowd. The difference between surviving and winning lies in what you do with pain. You didn't deny suffering, but you didn't cling to it either. You used it as fuel, as a bridge, as a brick. In that inner reconstruction, the silent victor was born. One who doesn't shout but changes rooms when they speak. One who doesn't need to show because their presence says it all. Some still try to read you by old versions, but those versions are gone. What was left behind was recycled into power. Those who don't see that can follow their own path. You no longer need an audience, only purpose. The stage is now spiritual, the audience divine. You rose from the mud to the light, head held high, And don't think you've stopped fighting. You just changed how you wage war. Now your weapon is peace, your armor discernment. You learned true victory isn't about defeating others, but mastering yourself. And so with steady steps and a soul at peace, you move forward, because silence will remain your greatest strategy. That moment when everyone expects your response, you look, take a deep breath, and choose silence. It's not escape, it's wisdom. That's when you realize not every battle deserves your energy. While they wait for your shout, you offer stillness. While they try to drag you into chaos, you choose to remain in peace. Silence was once mistaken for weakness by those who don't know the power of praying quietly. But you know, it's in silence that God speaks loudest. Jesus stood silent before Pilate, not because he lacked answers, but because he already had authority. When you grasp this, you stop reacting and start governing. Your peace became a shield, your calm a declaration. Responding is easy. Holding back takes mastery. You learned it takes less energy to be wise than to be right. Some fight for reason. You learned to stay silent for peace. And in that silence, heaven began to move. Because while you seemed passive, God was active. His justice doesn't fail. It acts at the perfect time. The world measures strength by volume, but the kingdom measures by depth. And you went deep. You stopped seeking revenge and started seeking direction. You stopped punching knives. Now, every step you take carries weight, not for noise, but for purpose. That's what sets you apart. You learned that getting distracted by provocations is straying from your calling. Today, when someone tries to hit you, you just observe. You know, those who shout loudest are hiding in security, but you have security, and it comes from God. Silence became your most powerful response, and those who know you now understand when you say nothing, something greater is being prepared. And speaking of preparation, some try to force doors open, but you learned something precious. When you become the key, you don't need to knock anymore. And that's what we'll talk about now. While some bet on shouting louder, you chose to rise higher. Your counterattack wasn't debate, it was elevation. Your response wasn't confrontation, it was leveling up. That disarms any attack, because no one can win a spiritual battle with carnal weapons. That's when the game changed, when you stopped playing their game. You decided not to waste time convincing those already set on misunderstanding, and you did what few dare. You rose. You elevated your thoughts, behavior, intentions. While they accused, you prayed. While they mocked, you grew. While they schemed, you built. That's the strength of the chosen. Some battles are only won in secret. You understood this. There were moments when everything in you wanted to react, but you bent your knees. You chose the Spirit's guidance over impulsive reaction. That choice moved you forward, silently, but with authority. Now, those who tried to diminish you see you growing in ways logic can't explain. And the most beautiful part? You didn't wish harm, you didn't repay in kind. Instead, you blessed. That confuses because the world expects war. But you brought light. You understood what Jesus said. Bless those who persecute you. That became your weapon. You became a bridge, not a wall, a path, not an obstacle, direction, not distraction. Now that you're on this new level, the war changes. Not because it's over, but because the environment is different. You're not the same, so your old enemies can't reach you anymore. The pain that pulled you now propels you. The voices that criticized no longer echo within you. You're free. You grew without fanfare, but with presence. This positions you where true authority begins, self-mastery. Because it's not enough to win outwardly, the most powerful victory happens within, and that's what we need to talk about next. You didn't shout, didn't explode, didn't react on impulse, and that startled them. They expected predictable reactions, but you surprised them with self-control. Here's the true key. Mastering yourself is the first step to mastering any environment. It's easy to try to defeat others, harder to defeat ego, pride, the need for the last word, but you did it. You silenced the inner noise. Authority is established in emotional control. You realized you don't need permission to be respected, just posture. Your calm became a throne. Your presence started shifting atmospheres, not by shouting louder, but by carrying peace where there was confusion. This isn't taught in books. It's learned in the soul's war, and you fought well. While they expected scandal, you delivered consistency. Your steadfastness unsettled those who thrive on reactions. The world shouts, but you learn to listen before acting. That pause between impulse and response saved you from traps many fall into. That's not passivity, it's discernment. And discernment gives you the advantage. Those who see you today may not realize the cost was high. Nights spent wrestling your own thoughts, the urge to explode, to let it all out. But you held back. Not from fear, but from awareness. You knew you were building something greater than an argument, an identity, someone who governs themselves before trying to change the world. Now, your authority isn't in titles, but in how you carry yourself. Not in what you say, but in the silence that commands respect. You can enter a room and change everything without a word, because your spirit is aligned with your mission. When that happens, there's no going back. It's as if heaven said, now you're ready. And being ready changes everything. Because self-mastery doesn't bow to any wind or get tainted by any opinion. That's when silent preparation reveals itself, not as just any plan, but as a purpose-driven destiny. Let's talk about that now. They were knocking on the wrong doors while you were being shaped to become the key. Some forced their way, you simply formed. You didn't chase space, you created it. Instead of wanting a seat at the table, you built your own, and prepared not just a place for you, but for those who'd come after. That's legacy, that's vision. And vision doesn't shout, it works. While many sought a stage, you sought preparation. It wasn't easy. No one saw the days you studied while others slept, the moments you let go of haste to honor the process. But you did it. You planted in silence. And now you're reaping fruit that didn't come by chance, but from the alignment of faith and decision. You realized that more than opening doors, becoming indispensable matters. And being indispensable isn't about pleasing. It's about being strategic, knowing what you carry, understanding that wherever you step, God already placed His seal. That awareness changes everything. You no longer enter just any place. Now you discern the environment. It's no longer about begging for acceptance. Today you're called. Before you were remembered. Now you're sought. And this didn't come from the outside in, but from the inside out. You became rare. And when something's rare, it doesn't overexpose, it protects. Because what you have isn't common, it's authority built in secret. Now you understand why you had to go through what you did. It was necessary to position you. While others wanted shortcuts, you chose depth. While they chased likes, you sought consistency. While they shouted for attention, you prayed for direction. That's the difference between those who merely appear and those who endure. Endurance comes from preparation, and preparation is only effective when done in silence, in hiding, in secret. So you're not late. You're exactly where you should be. And there's a greater reason for this time when everything seemed delayed. Let's dive into that now. Some seasons feel like abandonment, but are protection. While you thought you were being forgotten, God was guarding you. When no one called, heaven was saying, well, it's not time yet. That waiting period was a shield against premature environments, because what's born out of season doesn't bloom, it withers. And you weren't created to be shallow, you were shaped to last. The season of hiding wasn't punishment, it was refinement. It was time to sharpen the sword, not to rush into battle. While others exposed themselves too soon, you were preserved. What seemed like delay was strategy. What seemed like silence was teaching. You were taught not by words but by time, and time is a stern but just teacher. The world demands haste. Faith teaches waiting, and you learned to value waiting, even with an impatient heart. Every painful no was actually a loving not yet. When you stopped forcing doors, you noticed a spiritual rhythm forming. God was preparing you for something that couldn't fit in instant victories. Some despair in hiding, but you turned it into a dwelling place of wisdom. You read, prayed, wrote, dreamed. While no one saw, you went deeper, reinvented yourself, all in silence. Because deep roots keep the trunk from falling, and a strong foundation holds, no matter how long it takes to emerge. Here's the curious part. Those who ran ahead of you are now looking around, lost. Because running doesn't guarantee arrival. You, with steady, hidden steps, are more aligned than ever. It's not about visibility, it's about stability. And that doesn't come with haste, it comes with purpose. Now you understand, the hiding place wasn't punishment, it was an incubator. God whispering, I know what you carry, and I don't want it ruined before its time. When that time comes, no force can stop the blooming. And the best part, it's coming. And you'll respond, not with a shout, but with results. Nothing unsettles a provocateur more than no response. You learned early that those who attack want control over your mind, energy, peace. By choosing not to retaliate with scandal, you took control of the narrative. Your weapon was focus. Your revenge was progress. And let's be honest, there's no argument against results. While they accused, you organized. While they talked about you, you talked to God. While they plotted your fall, you climbed, step by step, calmly but firmly. It was a silent but powerful counterattack. You didn't respond with words. You responded with fruit. And fruit doesn't explain itself, it's harvested. Some still expect a reaction from you, but you don't even think about it anymore. Your mind is occupied with something far greater, your mission. And a mission isn't debated with those who live on opinions. You learned that scandal creates noise, but results create respect. Today, those who once diminished you now watch in silence. You made it clear, without saying a word, that you don't need to prove what's obvious. You don't need to explain what God has confirmed. You don't need to justify yourself to those who never wanted to understand. That's maturity, spiritual discernment, emotional intelligence, faith. The faith of someone who knows heaven is working while the earth doubts. This response with fruit didn't come from nowhere. It was planted in tears, watered with silence, strengthened by faith. With every ignored attack, you took another step forward. With every unrefuted slander, you conquered more inner territory. You didn't let it slide. You were busy growing. And now, what was once gossip is now testimony. Because what comes from God doesn't need defense, only manifestation. When you manifest results, the conversation changes, the table turns, the room quiets, the game transforms. That's why you no longer need to follow the old rules, because when you change the environment, you change the game. Before, you asked for permission. Now, you establish presence. You were the one knocking. Today, you are the door. What was doubt became direction. What was weakness became a mark of authority. The rules they used to measure you no longer reach you. You've changed levels. And those who change levels change the system. It's not arrogance, it's awareness. You realized you weren't called to fit in. You were chosen to transform. That transformation began when you stopped following the flow and started digging your own spring. The environment that once oppressed you now respects you, because your energy no longer depends on the external. It comes from your essence, forged in secret. The presence of someone who's overcome is unmistakable. You don't need to explain yourself anymore. When you enter a place, the environment responds. The atmosphere shifts, conversations realign, glances adjust. This happens when your spirit is in order, not by force but by alignment. You carry something money can't buy, and that unsettles. Those who saw you as wrong now have to see you as a reference. But you don't feed on that. You learned true validation doesn't come from applause. It comes from the peace you feel when your head hits the pillow. No price can buy that. And that truth set you free. You no longer move to prove, you move to fulfill. Your process taught you something few dare to live. When you change within, the world around you is forced to adjust, and that adjustment sometimes pushes away, unsettles, displaces. But don't worry, it's not rejection, it's repositioning. Everything that leaves can't handle your new frequency, and everything that stays will walk with you from here on. Now that you know who you are, you don't need a map. You are the path. Those who want to follow you must learn to walk with purpose, because you're not going back to the starting point. And the most beautiful part? The journey doesn't end here. It's just beginning, and it's sealed with a mark no one can remove. You've reached the point of no return. That old version is gone, not out of pride, but evolution. A butterfly doesn't return to the cocoon, neither do you. What was broken set you free. What was denied pushed you forward. What seemed like the end was, in truth, the birth of something prophetic, a transformation that can't be undone. It's no longer about motivation, it's about conviction. You didn't just overcome a phase, you became the victory. The fight is no longer about acceptance, it's about positioning. Because now you know everything you lived through, even the pain, served a purpose. Nothing was in vain, not a tear wasted, not a prayer ignored. The authority you carry now doesn't depend on the setting. It goes with you. It's in you. It's not measured by clothes, status, or speech. It's measured by the peace you sustain, the faith you breathe, the wisdom you apply, and above all, by the certainty that God doesn't err in choosing. And He chose you. You're not a product of chance. You're the manifestation of a greater plan. That awareness changes everything. How you walk, how you speak, how you decide. Because someone who's grasped their purpose doesn't get distracted by crumbs. Your walk now carries a heavenly signature, and when heaven stamps, no one can cancel. The transformation is eternal, like fire burning away impurities to reveal gold. You didn't just survive, you were refined. That goes beyond human explanation, beyond what they expected. Because now every step you take carries a promise time can't erase. What's been released over you is a divine seal, so keep going, walk without fear. The war is over, but the mission continues. And now you walk with authority, clarity, and faith, because no matter what you did, it worked. And that was more than enough to activate everything that was stored for you from the beginning. To know that you made it this far, comment below this video with the keyword of the day, "It worked." Share this video with someone who has also been doubted, underestimated, or ignored, but keeps going strong because deep down, they know they carry a greater purpose. And now tell me, which part of this journey resonated with you the most? What was your moment of silent breakthrough? Write it in the comments. Your story can strengthen others. And before you leave, click on the video appearing on the screen now. It will help you get to know yourself even more and confirm that, yes, you were chosen.